The air outside was thick with the humid weight of an approaching storm as I walked home from my friend's house. The quiet of the street seemed to press in on me, making the night feel heavy and oppressive. I had been on edge for weeks, ever since strange things started happening around my apartment. Doors creaking open, shadows darting in the corners of my eyes, and that overwhelming sense that something was watching me. But tonight, I was determined to get answers. Once inside, I locked the door behind me and hurried to my bedroom. The idea of setting up a camera had come to me days ago, but I'd been too scared to follow through. Now, I felt like I had no choice. Whatever was happening wasn't just my imagination. There were nights when I'd wake up to an eerie silence, my heart racing, feeling like something or someone had been in the room with me. Tonight, I needed proof. With trembling hands, I positioned the camera at the foot of my bed, ensuring it had a clear view of both the door and the space beneath the bed. The footage had to capture everything. I set it to record, and then, exhausted from the day's events, I collapsed onto my bed. The moment my head hit the pillow, sleep claimed me faster than I expected. But even in sleep, a part of me was alert, anxiously waiting for morning. When I finally stirred awake, it was dawn. The room was bathed in pale light. I felt a strange calm. Perhaps nothing had happened after all. As I reached for the camera, my stomach churned with unease, but I convinced myself it was just nerves. I clicked play and fast-forwarded through the first few hours of footage, seeing nothing but myself shifting occasionally in my sleep. But then, the screen flickered as the timestamp hit 3 a.m. My heart skipped a beat. A dark shape emerged from the shadows beneath my bed. It was a woman, skeletal and frail, her naked form unnaturally contorted as she crawled out from the darkness. Her skin was a sickly, pale gray, stretched so tightly over her bones that her veins pulsed visibly across her body. I felt bile rise in my throat as I watched her stand, her movements jerky and unnatural, like a puppet being pulled by invisible strings. She stood by the side of my bed, watching me sleep. Her face, gaunt and terrifying, was expressionless at first. But then, after a few minutes, her lips curled into the widest, most grotesque smile I had ever seen. Her eyes, completely black and empty, reminded me of endless voids, sucking in all light and life around them. For an hour, she remained motionless, her gaze fixed on my sleeping form, as if waiting for something. And then, she moved. Slowly, methodically, she turned towards the camera. My breath caught in my throat as she approached the lens, her eyes locked onto it with an intensity that made my skin crawl. Inch by inch, her face grew larger on the screen until it filled the entire shot. For 2 hours, she stood there, inches away from the camera. Her face, twisted with that horrible smile, stared unblinking into the lens. Occasionally, her head would jerk to one side, and then the other, as if she were listening for something, but her gaze never wavered. I couldn't tear my eyes away from the screen. What was she? Why was she here? My mind raced with a million questions, but no answers. I sat frozen in my chair, watching in horror as this creature, this thing, continued to stare into the camera as if it knew I would be watching. My hands shook uncontrollably. I wanted to stop the video, to turn away, but I couldn't. Something in those black eyes held me captive. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, she moved again. Slowly, she backed away from the camera, her skeletal limbs moving in a grotesque, almost unnatural fashion. She turned her head towards the bed, and for a brief moment, it looked like she was grinning even wider, her lips stretching impossibly far. My heart raced as I watched her crawl back under the bed, vanishing into the shadows from which she came. I skipped forward through the footage, my hands trembling so badly I almost dropped the camera. The recording showed me waking up the next morning, oblivious to the nightmare that had unfolded just beneath me. I watched myself stretch, yawn, and casually walk to the camera, shutting it off. But as the video ended, one chilling fact remained. She never left. The reality hit me like a freight train. Whatever that thing was, it was still there, under my bed. My body froze in place, and I felt the weight of my fear suffocating me. My mind raced through every possibility. Could I run? Would it follow me? I glanced at the floor where the edge of the bed met the cold wooden floorboards. The shadows beneath seemed darker, deeper, as if they were hiding something far more terrifying than I could imagine. Every instinct screamed at me to get up, to leave the house, but my body refused to move. I was paralyzed, torn between the overwhelming terror of what I had just witnessed and the growing fear of what lay beneath my bed. I knew I couldn't live like this, afraid of my own home, of my own bed. I needed to face it, but I couldn't do it alone. I grabbed my phone and called my closest friend, Tom. His voice, groggy and confused from being woken so early, did little to calm my nerves, but he agreed to come over immediately. As I waited, the silence in my room grew unbearable. Every creak of the floor, every gust of wind outside seemed to hold the promise of something far worse. My eyes kept flicking towards the bed, half expecting to see that grotesque face peering out from underneath. By the time Tom arrived, I was a mess, shaking and drenched in cold sweat. Tom didn't believe me at first. He laughed nervously when I told him what I'd seen, but when I showed him the footage, his face went pale. His hands shook as he held the camera, his eyes wide with disbelief. "What the hell is that?" he whispered, barely able to speak. "We need to get out of here," I said, but he shook his head. "We need to find out what it is. If this thing is real, we can't just run. We have to stop it." I wasn't sure if he was brave or just reckless, but his words stirred something in me. I didn't want to live in fear, constantly wondering if she would come out again. Together, we decided to stay the night, keeping watch over the room and waiting to see if she would return. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the room. Every noise, every whisper of wind outside seemed amplified. Tom and I sat in silence, our eyes glued to the bed. The camera was set up again, this time with an additional flashlight in case she reappeared. Hours passed, but nothing happened. Midnight came and went, and the tension in the room thickened. At 3 a.m., the same time she had emerged before, the air in the room grew colder, unnaturally cold. My breath came out in small, visible puffs, and an eerie silence settled around us. Then, we heard it, a faint scratching sound, coming from beneath the bed. Our hearts pounded as we leaned in, straining to hear. The sound grew louder, more deliberate. The nightmare had begun again. Have you ever wondered what creatures may be hiding under your bed? Pause this video. Look under your bed. Please like and subscribe to this channel for similar stories.